Tourism is slowly recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic. And the Western Cape says it's now time to focus on growth in the sector and creating employment. To discuss this some more, we're joined by the Western Cape's MEC for Finance and Economic Opportunities, Mireille Wenger, who joins us virtually from a beautiful Cape Town. Mireille, thank you so much for your time. Now, this week, the Western Cape Tourism Trade and Investment Promotion Agency, WestGrow, announced that statistics for April show the proportion of foreign tourists at Cape Town International Airport has achieved a full recovery compared to pre-pandemic levels in April of 2019. This is a massive relief for your industry, but like you say, a time to grow now. But talk to us about what you're seeing in the numbers right now.
Well, morning, Marcel. This is really great news. Tourism is back. And we can see that in the statistics and the number of passengers coming through Cape Town International Airport, which is fully recovered. In April, we saw a total of 67,000 tourist arrivals by air, 87% of which came from overseas markets and 13% from the African continent. So now that tourism is back, we're focusing our efforts on growing the tourism industry beyond 2019 levels.
It is really quite astounding. On an anecdotal level, I flew in and out of Cape Town just last week. My family's out in the Winelands area, so that's where I moved. And even though it's now the beginning of the winter season, and I know in the tourism industry down there, they call it the secret season. It's the season that I love as well, because everything is green and lush, and you really can travel to the Western Cape throughout the year. But it was really astounding compared to the pandemic years that we came through, just hearing all of the foreign languages coming through those passages in the airport, in the restaurants, in the tourist hotspots. It really, really is encouraging to see that. And you can also just see people who feared for their jobs during those intense times now being able to be employed, and even more people being able to be employed.
Absolutely. It was a very tough time for the tourism and hospitality industry in the COVID pandemic. But it's really a remarkable industry as well, and how resilient it's been, and being able to get back on track so quickly. And of course, we really welcome this and support the tourism industry in any way we can, because more tourists mean more jobs. And we saw that in the Q4 jobs numbers, where tourism was the major driver of the 167,000 jobs created in the Western Cape. And if I may just shout out to Boschendal in the Cape Winelands, that was named as the most Instagrammed wine farm in the world earlier this week, beating out wine farms in France, Spain, the United States. And we were also lucky that 3 other Western Cape vineyards got that accolade in the top 30. If I recall correctly, it was Tokara, Spear, and Waterkloof that also in the top 30 most Instagrammed vineyards in the world, and quite rightly so.
It is another challenge for our tourism industry, isn't it? You can't just put on good food or good hospitality. You have to have a few spots that you know are Instagram worthy, because if it doesn't make it onto Instagram, it just isn't worth it, isn't it? That's really, really a fascinating development. Let's talk a little bit about growth now. And I know you spoke this week about how it's important now that they move beyond just recovery and to growth. Every year, the industry would have looked to grow. And we're looking at having lost out on 3 years of growth. Do you think one would be able to make up that lost time? And what would be the best building blocks to be able to get that growth really going?
So that's an excellent question, and that's something that we're working on. How do we enable the tourism and hospitality sector to grow? Because we know that we have a fantastic product, we have so many diverse offerings. So what we're working on is getting more tourists to our destination. So we have within WestGrow an air access team that works very hard on getting more flights into Cape Town and the Western Cape. And just this week, we welcomed a new flight from Eswatini to Cape Town. And earlier this week, a flight from Lusaka, Zambia into Cape Town as well. And last year we had 4 new flights into Cape Town as well, from Belgium, the United States, and so on. So these new flights help to get more tourists into the country, so that they can enjoy our tourist offerings. The other thing that we're working on is, our lobby efforts with the national government to make sure that we can get a remote working visa introduced. as well as the e-visa for travelers, especially from the continent that want to come and visit, so that we can make it as easy as possible for travelers to come here and enjoy time in South Africa.
Then there are also issues, I suppose, that isn't completely in your control, although your local government is trying to change that. Issues that the whole country is dealing with, obviously load shedding being one, and of course our ongoing crime problem. How are those in your sector approaching those challenges from their perspective?
Well, the tourism and hospitality industry has been very robust in making sure that when tourists come, they don't have the worst effects of load shedding, but that has put pressure on the industry because it's a lot of additional costs to be able to have that energy resilience. So at a provincial level and at a city level, there's a lot of work being done to become as independent from Eskom as quickly as possible. The province, we've put 1.1 billion rand into our energy resilience program, and we're working very hard to make load shedding or have less load shedding in the Western Cape as quickly as possible, and that's for all our residents. Then in terms of safety, you'll know we have the provincial safety plan, which is one of the most extensive safety plans, also a 1 billion rand safety plan to have 1,000 additional law enforcement officers in the most crime-ridden communities. And then in addition to that, we have a tourism safety unit for those areas where the most number of tourists visit to make sure that they can have a safe and wonderful experience when they're here. And we also provide information to tourists on being vigilant and how to contact us if they have questions or they're not sure. So we really try and support in every way that we can. And I think the numbers bear it out that, everybody wants to come to South Africa and the Western Cape.
Okay, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time, and all the best to you and your team as you try and take an important industry forward. That is Mireille Venga. She is the Western Cape Finance and Economic Opportunities MEC, and she, interestingly enough, announcing there that Boshendal made the top of the list as the most Instagrammed vineyard. I think in the world it is. The others mentioned, including Tokara, and I just realized I added to that. I Instagrammed from Tokara just last week.